It is just a couple minutes after 7. I'm Julie Barrett. I'm the founder of Conservative Ladies of Washington, and we are in the midst of our summer legislative Smackdown series. And we just took a couple of weeks off, and now we're back at it. This is part 1 of a 2-part series on K-12 education in Washington State, which is a big issue, an important issue to parents, to citizens, even who may not be parents, grandparents. As you probably are well aware, there is a lot going on in education that is extremely concerning. And so we are going to, tonight, we're going to talk a lot about the legislative aspect of K-12 education in Washington. We're going to talk about what's happened in previous sessions as well as in the 2023 session. And then next week, we're going to talk about kind of options and creative solutions for parents who maybe want to get their kids out of public schools or who can't get their kids out of public schools, and some tools to give you so that you can navigate the public school system. But tonight we really want to inform you all about what is going on legislatively in Washington State with education, so that you have an understanding of how what happens in the legislative session impacts your school district and your students. And also really what we want you to take away from this session tonight is how you can engage and how you can take action to create change in the education system in Washington State. And I'm really excited because we have an all-star lineup on our panel this evening, and we have so much ground to cover tonight that I'm going to introduce them all right up front rather quickly. But you can go back to the Zoom registration link if you want to read their bios and learn more about each one of them. And you can also contact them. I believe I've put their Twitter links and website information into their panelist bio on that Zoom registration link, so you can connect with them there. And when we upload this to YouTube, we will also have all of their contact information. So if you'd like to reach out to any of them offline, you can do so. So tonight we have Finne, who is the education director for education policy director, I believe, for Washington Policy Center. And Liv is very instrumental in the education legislative aspect in Washington State. And I became acquainted with Liv right before I got involved in legislation in Washington. And so she has been a huge resource for me, a huge resource for Conservative Ladies of Washington. So thank you, Liv, for joining us this evening. We've also got State Representative Jim Walsh, who is not currently on the education committee, but writes a lot of bills for education to improve our education system, and is very well versed in education, believes in education choice for parents and students in Washington State. And it's one of his top priorities as a legislator. So Representative Walsh, we are grateful to have you again with us this evening. We've also got former Representative Brad Klippert. He was a representative from 2008 to 2022 from the 8th Legislative District in the Kennewick area. And he is also a candidate for OSPI, which is the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. He would make an amazing OSPI. So would encourage you all to support Brad Klippert's campaign for OSPI. And Brad, we are grateful to have you again with us this evening. And we've got MJ Bolt, who is with us tonight from Spokane. And MJ is here on her own behalf, but she sits on the Washington State Board of Education, and she is also the vice chair of the Spokane County GOP. So MJ, we are grateful to have you. So many great people with us tonight. It's very exciting. And we've also got Jeannie Magdua, who is one of our legislative action team leads, and she was played an integral part in the education committee legislation this session. And she is also an educator. Jeannie is a teacher. And we've also got Leslie Williams, who is another one of she's our other. We just have the two gals that are our legislative action team leaders. And Leslie is a homeschool mom to, is it 4 kids, I believe. So she has that a very unique perspective as a homeschool mom. And Leslie also was a very integral part in the education legislation this session. And we've got with us also from our legislative action team, we've got Eric Pratt, who I call him Washington's unsung hero. He is he testifies all over the place in legislation. Eric is a single father and he is quite a warrior in Olympia, and Eric will be moderating our Q&A tonight. So if you've got questions for our panel, please drop those into the Q&A. So that's different than the chat. Put those in the Q&A, and Eric will be pulling questions from the Q&A for our panel tonight. And lastly, we've got Joy Gersvald from Moms for Liberty, Kitsap County. And Joy has got a wealth of information, is a wealth of information on education. And so she will be chiming in and helping navigate this conversation with us this evening. So Joy, I'm glad you could join us as well. All right, let's get right into it. That is the panel. And so I have asked Finne to kind of start us off with her recap of the 2023 legislative session, kind of the highs and the lows. So Liv, I'm going to turn it over to you and give you a few minutes to chat about that.
Okay, thank you very much for the great introduction. You can all hear me, right? Okay, great. So great, good. So I would say that the legislative session, it was a very interesting development after a succession of years. In 2019, the comprehensive sex ed law was passed. Then we had COVID, where the schools were shut down for 2 years. Then in 2020, we had a bill passed and signed by the governor that introduced the requirement that every teacher in the state be trained in critical race theory, the theory as a truth. Okay, so that was in 2021. And in reaction to that, there were a number of school districts that passed bills passed policies at their local level saying that they would not teach that any child is superior to any other, that that district would treat every child as having the blessings of life in an equal way, equal opportunity under all, restating basically our constitutional principles, legal laws that say that we do not discriminate on basis of race. And a number of districts passed those resolutions. And what I think of the 2023 session as an effort against those local controlled resolutions. And there were a number of bills introduced that threatened us. There was one that threatened school districts with a cut of 20% funding if they did not do as the OSPI felt the district should do insofar as using certain textbooks to teach certain things. Okay, so that was one bill that the Conservative Ladies of Washington was very effective at pushing back against that. There were several other bills to try to centralize further control in the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction over the materials that will be taught to our children in local school districts. And that's one of the beauties of the system of public education we have in Washington State, is that we truly have a system of local control, where local school boards have broad authority to set policy at the local level, to choose the methods of instruction and books of instruction that are provided to our students. And what I think of the 2023 session as is an effort to reduce local control. And so I was quite encouraged by the success that we had in stopping some of the worst bills. One of the bills that was most concerning, and it's a repeat from the prior session, was this state teachers union tried to reduce instructional hours, the definition of instructional hours, by 4 hours a week. So by reducing essentially 20%, 15 to 20% of instructional hours that our students are entitled to get by law, by definition. And that was beat back by the good work of the conservative ladies of Washington. That was a bill that was tried in the previous session. So the union is clearly serious about this. They want to have Fridays off every week. So I'd say that this session was actually pretty successful given the blowback to these efforts to control, increase local, central control. There, unfortunately, the state superintendent of public instruction's office has been captured by some activists that believe in ideas that the general mainstream of Washington state do not support. And these are a whole range of ideas. We can all discuss this, but from comprehensive sex education to to misconstruing the law and pointing to say that that the districts are allowed to lie to parents about what's happening to their child in school, which I find as a former lawyer, I'm a retired lawyer, to see the state superintendent of public instruction misapply, improperly invoke RCWs to further policies to hide facts from parents, I find really objectionable. So I'm encouraged by the incredible interest in what's happening in the schools now, people running for school board, and what I'm seeing in other states. But I won't, in response to this, is happening across the nation. This is a phenomenon that every state is dealing with. This advent of this theology indoctrination that our society is systemically racist, that we have to eliminate all programs for gifted children, that we have to dumb down everyone so everyone's at a low level. This is happening across the country, and there are different responses in different states because of different political powers in different states. In Washington State, we've managed to hold back some of the worst, but I fear that if we aren't if we're not aware of what's coming, we will not be prepared for the next session, which could be just as bad or worse. So I think that I'll stop with that.
That was great recap. Thank you, Leave. And it's important to point out that you touched on that we had some wins in stopping a lot of these bad bills, and
Yes.
and in a legislature that is completely dominated by the Democrats. They really can do whatever they want. And so the fact that we were able to stop a lot of bad bills in education was a really big success. And that was because so many parents really spoke out on these bills.
It was remarkable. I was surprised because prior to the last 2 years, parents were not showing up in force to testify in Olympia, but the last 2 years has seen a tremendous expansion of parental voice and effective parental voices. So I'm very pleased by that development, and I encourage it to continue because it definitely is having an impact. And I know that we upset some of the powers that be down there just from personal accounts. I can't really tell you.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Jeannie's got her hand up. So before I turn it over to Representative Walsh, Jeannie, do you want to chime in here?
Sorry. So I just wanted to comment that what Leave is talking about with local control in our state, she had pointed me to the RCW, and I don't remember what the number is now, but you could probably tell me. And it's super clear that local school districts have control over curriculum. And so one of the things that I really wanted to encourage people is to go to their school board meetings and talk to their school board directors, because we do have much more power than those at the state level would like us to believe. And that also harkens back to something that Jim Walsh had said in a meeting a couple of weeks ago about really knowing our RCWs. And I just want to encourage people to read through. It seems so boring, but it really does give you, a lot of power to understand what our RCWs actually say.
I could give them real quickly to you right now, if you'd like.
Go for it.
Yes.
RCW 28A.320.015 gives broad discretionary power to school board directors over policy. And the second one over instructional materials, RCW 28A.320.230. That gives control over instructional materials. There's no question about it. The law is very clear.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, let's move on to, and just so everybody knows, we're going to come back to all of this. I want to move on to Representative Walsh. Jim, I would like for you to share a little bit about specifically your good bills that you dropped this session. I don't recall the numbers offhand, but I know you had this school choice one, the scholarship bill again, and then you had the school resource officer. If you could talk about those bills, I think it's really important for our citizens to know that there are these good bills and how we as citizens can champion these bills to get them to move forward a little bit.
Well, sure, Julie. Welcome, everybody. I ran this past session, as I run every session, the main school choice bill. There are actually a couple versions of it circulating, but it would create a system of what in Washington State we call scholarships, education scholarships. For various technical reasons, we don't use the term voucher, but the scholarship system would act like a voucher system in other states. We modeled it on what other states are doing. Arizona was one, there are others. And then I ran a couple of other bills that would make the operations of K-12 schools around the state better. One did fund a school resource officer, at least one on every school campus, every building, public school building in the state. And then a couple of attempts to restructure the so-called prototypical school budget model, which is really the bane of school finance in the state of Washington, and would move it toward a something like a cleaner per student allocation of resources to public schools. The school choice bill would move less than the full apportionment per student to the families to be used as they choose. We've been working with different amounts over the past couple of years, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 or possibly $15,000 per year per student would go into the scholarship fund that the family could use at its discretion to send a child to a public school, to a different public school from where they live, to a private school, use it to offset homeschooling expenses or any other method of K-12 learning that the family chooses. In our state, we spend on average $18,000 per student per year. So the way that this program is structured, school districts would not be hurt by the choice program. In fact, they would be left with some essentially reserve money in their standard allocations if children left their district to go elsewhere for education. And then if the district managed their resources right, it would actually increase their money available per student remaining in their school district. So it anticipates some of the criticisms made, and it remains controversial. The current chair of the House Education Committee won't even give it a hearing. She won't even discuss it, but we'll continue to file it anyway every session just to keep reminding her what is right. I too am encouraged by the number of people, truly reform-minded people, running for school boards around the state. It's a little patchy. I wish it were everywhere, but it's lots of places that we're getting people, parents and grandparents running for school boards. And I think it's really encouraging. I'm really excited about what's going to happen at school districts around the state. To talk about some of those foundational documents that you need to know, in the Washington State Constitution, it's Article 9 that describes basic education and the state's paramount duty to provide the resources to basic education. That's Article 9 of the Washington State Constitution. And then the chapter in the Revised Code of Washington, that is the statutory law of Washington, as Leave mentioned, is 28A. There are various subsections to it, of course. It's a large chapter in the RCW, but it covers really all the nuts and bolts of managing K-12 schools in the state of Washington. Everything from what principals are to what teachers are to how they're hired to how they're paid. The prototypical school budget model is in chapter 28A. And the language that we're referring to that gives school boards an equal standing in the law to the governor or to the superintendent of public instruction. The language is broad discretionary power. It is literally the same words that the law uses in giving power to the governor and giving power to the superintendent. So school boards literally have the same power that the governor or state superintendent have. They are powerful indeed, and they have been trained to think of themselves as not powerful. And what we need to do is we need to get people elected onto school boards who understand how powerful they are and don't give in to this sort of indoctrination and training that they face primarily from the School Directors Association, WASDA, in our state, which basically trains new school board members to be scared, to be very scared, and that they may be sued personally if they make any mistakes, and that they may not have insurance coverage if they make any mistakes, and they better do what the superintendent tells them to, or they will be sued and insurance and sued. And as silly as it sounds, this kind of indoctrination really does creep into the minds of newly elected school board members, and they become timid and they doubt their power. So we need to remind them that they are powerful, and our system is designed to give them broad discretionary power over the school books they choose, over the curricula they choose, over the teachers they hire or fire, the principals they hire and fire. School boards have the power to set the agenda and the means of how kids are taught in their district, and we need to empower them to do that effectively.
That is a really great point. And I see MJ has her hand up. I know Leslie, you also do, but I know MJ and I were talking this afternoon about WASDA and the school board. So I want to, I see she's kind of chomping at the bit. So MJ, why don't you go ahead and chime in here, please?
Yeah, appreciate it. Well, it's an honor to be here. As always, I respect our panelists so much that it really is an honor for me. So thank you. And thanks for sharing that, Representative Walsh, about school boards. I'm a former school board member actually as well. I served 4 years on my local school board, and I would agree with everything that Jim just said, unfortunately, right? And we have well-meaning people in these positions, and in WASDA, as superintendents, as teachers. And unfortunately, that is the system. That's the way that the system is designed. I have great respect for our superintendents. They do a very hard job, and often they find themselves between a rock and a hard place with state legislation or mandates, governor mandates, and listening to parents. However, I do think that school boards have to push back, and they have to stand up and say, our people are screaming and we have to find a way to listen. And they can push back on the superintendents, and they can push back on our legislation and our legislators and our governor. And I don't see that happening yet. I think we're getting better. And we can see, as Jim mentioned, all the amazing people that are running for school boards. I know around here, when I ran, nobody ran against me. Now that was, 12 years. Well, let's see how many, 12 years ago, actually, nobody, it was just kind of a shoo-in, right? Now it's different, and people are paying attention, and we have to take that back. So I just wanted to just echo what Jim said. And then one other thing is that I really do think, again, great respect, right? I think they do a hard job, our superintendents, but they also have been taught to manage their boards. That's the status quo, right? And that's what we have to, as Jim was saying, push back against and start to question. We're starting to find out that even I've often seen WASDA as the messenger of the law, right? So they deliver these district policies, these model policies. And so they're not as, except for what Jim was saying, they're not as much the bad guys as the law is, right? However, as Lee, and attorneys, we have difference of opinions from attorneys. And we are seeing school districts push back with some of these policies saying, that's your opinion of the interpretation of the application of the law. But we've gotten another one from another attorney. So we're starting to see, like La Center, I believed, adopted a different policy than the model WASDA policy around the transgender issue. And I think we need to encourage that. Great respect again for our attorneys as well. And you can get different opinions, from attorneys, just like you can doctors. So that's where we have to start standing up, and we have to start pushing back where we can, where within the law, right? And then push back also at the legislation level.
Good. Thank you, MJ. That was a great addition. And I think, pushing back, taking back the power to the local school board, and empowering these school board directors that they do have that authority to do that. Leslie, you've got your hand up. I know you want to chime in as well, so go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going back to the, not called vouchers, but the school vouchers. If I remember right, they were opt-in. You did not have to take the money. And for all of this, the homeschool parents out there, when my husband, Lonnie, was on the campaign trail, that was a lot of voice from the homeschool parents. They were worried that if they were taking money from the state, that they would have to start doing what the state was telling them they had to teach. And they didn't want that. So I wanted to make sure that I made it known to those homeschool parents out there that it's an opt-in money thing. You don't have to take the money. And hopefully that keeps the homeschool parents safe from being able to having to teach what was this state is telling them to. So Jim, keep that in mind for the future. That needs to stay as an opt-in. The homeschool parents really don't want to take it if they don't have to.
Yeah, the program is opt-in. There's no mandatory involvement.
Right.
Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, so I can tell you that there's a very valid concern of the homeschool families and private schools that if there is a voucher that comes with government money, that their independence will be threatened. So believe me, the school choice community is well aware of that concern. And now in the most recent school choice laws, for example, in Arizona, which just made school choice universal. Everyone in that family in that state is eligible to get an ESA with about $6,000 to $7,000 in it to educate their child. It explicitly separates out homeschool families as being separate from school choice ESA takers, and also says explicitly that nothing in this law allows the government to control what the homeschooler is teaching or what the private school is teaching. So they have some very explicit language now in these homeschool laws to protect against that concern.
And we incorporated some of that language that Lee was talking about into the latest iteration of the ESA bill here in Washington.
Yes, I saw that. It's very good.
I want to pull Brad into this a little bit. Brad, I don't recall if you actually sat on the education committee. I know that you were a big voice on a lot of that legislation in prior sessions in the 14 years that you were in the legislature. And I know education obviously is huge for you, that you're running for OSPI. Did you have any thoughts on legislation in prior years that you think our audience should be aware of right now?
Well, I did sit on the education committee for, if I remember correctly, 6 of those 14 years. Chris Ragdoll and I both sat on the education committee at the same time. We sat across the aisle from each other on the floor of the House of Representatives. And then I was asked by those who make those decisions to sit on the early learning committee. And I contacted that person who made that decision and said, if you put me on that committee, I will vote no on every bill that comes across my desk, just in protest from being put on that committee and taken off the education committee. And she said to me, Brad, I need you there. And I didn't know if I believed her or not, but it took about 2 days of sitting on early learning committee and seeing why she put me there. And so I was, how do I say it? I agreed with her that that was a good thing for me to sit there. And so, yeah, sat on the education committee for about 6 years, early learning for about 8 years. And ladies and gentlemen, if you look behind Leslie, let them see the Minuteman behind your head there. There's a Minuteman back there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, during the Revolutionary War, those citizens of the United States, of which there were 13 at the time, of America, got the name Minutemen because they were willing to respond in a minute's notice to the needs of their country that they were trying to establish and create freedom and a new nation. That is what we need from each and every one of you today. When there is something important at a school board meeting, you've got to be there. When there's something important at the city council meeting that affects education, you've got to be there. We have got to be the Minutemen of 2023, 2024, and forever. We must never once again allow ourselves to be complacent with our education system, because as we can see, if we are, they will take it over and they will steal our children. We have not yet talked today about Senate Bill 5599. It's abysmal. It must never, ever, ever take effect. We must rise up and stand against it. These are our children. They're a gift from God to us, to their parents, their grandparents, their aunts, their guardians. They are not a gift of God to the state of Washington, and we will rise up and protect the children in Washington state. We will fight for our children and the education system, and we're going to get back to academics. We're going to teach the academics that we send our children there to learn reading, writing, arithmetic, science, technology, engineering, civics, truthful history, and we're going to teach them those skills that they can carpentry, welding, electronics, be a technician for a dentist, or on and on it goes, the opportunities where children can actually graduate from our schools with a family wage education so they can go out there and get a job, support their families, and stay out of gangs and all the other things. So we got a mess on our hands right now, but you and I are going to work together, just like those Minutemen on Leslie's behind her there that she's allowed us all to see. We're going to rise up, we're going to fight back, and we're going to win our nation, our education system back.
Amen. That feel like you need like a round of applause now. I wish the whole audience could clap. They're all commenting, and you got a lot of votes you just picked up there. So, you know,
Well, I got a smile out of Jim Walsh, so I must have done something okay.
You know what, I'd like you to talk about what people can do, because what people may not know is that you, Representative Klippert, are the reason that Conservative Ladies of Washington is involved in legislation. It was you that in April of 2021, after you and I connected over an unfortunate circumstance, you realized the audience that I had, and you said, you need to get these ladies to email their representatives. And you told me what you needed us to do, and we did it. And that was my introduction to legislation. And so can you talk a little bit about how citizens can engage and be effective in the legislative process to influence? I mean, what we saw this year was huge, but can you talk a little bit about the voice of the citizen to their legislators?
Yeah, and with Jim and Lee here, they can jump in anywhere they want to. My eyes are I hope I can keep myself emotionally together. So filled with tears right now. There's nothing more important that you can do. When we have citizens come before the legislature in committee, now it's nice to get on Zoom because there's people who live in Eastern Washington and the snow will come and it's hard to get over the pass and all that stuff. I understand there are those circumstances, but if you can come in person and speak to your legislators in person. And some people will come, they're nervous, they'll bring 2-3 pages of notes and they'll read them in a monotone voice. Study your notes before it's time for you to speak, and then just speak from your heart with passion. Let your heart come out, and let the spirit come out of you, and tell them respectfully, because if you talk in a manner that is disrespectful, then the legislators will turn you off. But talk respectfully with passion and power and say, this is truth. This is truth. And that's what we want taught in our schools. We don't want your theories. We don't want your political propaganda. We want our children to read that to learn that 2 + 2 = 4. Cat is spelled C-A-T. And the truth about our history in this country and the wonderful men and women who fought, bled, and died for our freedom. And so, yeah, just get in front of that legislature every opportunity you possibly have, and get on the phone with your legislator. Just when you get a hold of their legislative assistant, say, may I have 5 minutes of Representative Jim Walsh's time, and then keep it to that, because next time he'll know he can trust you. It's just going to be 5 minutes, and share with them your heart, share with them what's happening in your local area, and say, this is the one thing that I would encourage everyone. Representative Walsh, what can I do for you? I've come to you with my heart, what I think I want you to do for us. What can I do for you? Give them that opportunity, because know that we have things where we can give you assignments like soldiers in a great army. If you will help me with this or that, it'll be very, very powerful. Sorry, I went on a rant. I got excited.
No, that was great. Jim, do you have anything to add to that as far as citizen engagement in legislation and how to impact legislation?
Well, you're already doing a good job of it through Conservative Ladies. I mean, what we need is coordinated action. And we have the hearing process during every legislative session. Bills rarely go straight to the floor. They go through a committee, and the committee is the place and the time that the public gets to speak, gets to voice its opinion about a bill or proposal. And what you've already done effectively, and really your group has become known and feared and dreaded in Olympia for directing people to sign on. Like Brad says, in person is great, but online will do. Voice their opinion, either for or against a proposal, a bill, and chime in with some comments. And sometimes get online in a format like this one and be able to speak for or against a bill that's being heard by the committee. We can use activism at the committee level to stop bad bills there, to make sure they don't get to the floor of the legislature for a vote. And some of that is done through persuasion, and some of that is done through coercion. If the bill sponsors and the committee chairs and the speaker understand that a bill is unpopular enough, they will sometimes table it for another time, another session, the next year, whenever, because they don't want the hassle. Sometimes they'll double down and run a bill anyway, even though they know it's unpopular. And that's what we saw happen several times this past session. But for every time they doubled down and pushed a bad bill through anyway, we were able to stop bad bills because they just didn't want the trouble. You know, there's so much we can talk about too. I mean, we can talk about pure policy. We can talk about the tension between OSPI and the governor's office, the state level people and the local school boards. We can talk about the money, how the money flows. and the current superintendent, Mr. Reichel's threats against school boards and school districts that he would cut their operating funds if they failed to obey. And we can talk about how Mr. Reichel has made a practice out of publishing these idiotic memos that misquote state law. And his favorite trick is to put two sections of state law next to each other in citations where they don't actually fit together at all, to try to create an impression of some sort of statutory requirement or statutory power that he has as superintendent that on the plain face of it he doesn't have. Mr. Reichel did this during the COVID shutdowns, where he told school districts in one of these memos that if they didn't obey his mandates, he could cut their operating funds, and just idiotically compared a section of the RCW, which referenced basically criminal actions, embezzlements and other things from a school board, allowing in certain very strange circumstances of such criminality, the state to withhold some funds to a school board, and then tried to compare that to a totally unrelated section of statutory law that gave the governor certain extraordinary powers during a time of emergency, and tried to claim that this combined combination of unrelated sections of law gave him, the superintendent, the power to withhold funds. It was just ridiculous. He's done it again recently with a similar memo on treating transgender issues with students, where once again, he cites parts of the state law that have nothing to do with a child's gender dysphoria, and tries to create this impression that somehow by stitching together like Frankenstein's monster, parts of the law that have nothing to do with each other, somehow he's got the authority to tell school districts essentially that they can lie to parents and withhold information about what's going on with children at their schools. It's absolutely idiotic. And this is the reason why we need Brad Klippert to get in there and replace this guy Reichel, because I don't think Brad Klippert would misquote statutory law as much as Mr. Reichel does. These are the issues we're dealing with, and this is where we need people activated. So there's not much you can do about Reichel's crazy memos, but there's a lot you can do when a bill during the legislative session is at a committee hearing where you can chime in and just, as Brad said, you don't need to speak from 3 pages of notes. Get on the Zoom call or show up in person and say, this is a bad law. Please don't support it.
Yeah, I see Jeannie has her hand up, and as you were speaking, Jim, I was thinking how it would be great to have Jeannie talk about what it's like to testify as a citizen. I don't know if that's what she's planning to say, but while you have the mic, would you also talk about what it is like to testify as a citizen?
And that's exactly what I was going to talk about.
Okay, good.
So, yeah. So I know that you, Julie, did this pretty much all by yourself in the 22 session, and it just blows my mind that you did that. So this year, when a team got put together and each team member got assigned like a certain task, so some would review the bills that were coming up, some would help write the testimony. There was like calls to action to sign in, and I don't know how to explain that very well, but to sign in con or pro on the bill that was coming up. And then, you know, I know that for a lot of people, speaking in public is terrifying. For me, it's not that scary. So I was willing to speak in the legislative committees. So it's a little bit, it's daunting in a way, because when we are waiting for our turn, you know, especially in a Zoom meeting this way, we're hearing other people take up the amount of time in the committee with their testimony. And, you know, if they're for a bill that one party wants to have pass, then they allow those people to speak longer, giving those of us who don't agree with the bill less time. It is very frustrating. But I think in the way it looks to me is if we have an overwhelming number of people who sign in a certain way on a bill, either pro or con, that sends a message to these representatives that they're, you know, what they're trying to do isn't popular with us. And as much as that doesn't seem to be the case in Washington, that does matter to them. So the other thing too that I noticed is there some of the committee leaders, you start to get to know their ways of things. There's one, I think she was in the education committee. She's very abrupt, and that can seem really intimidating, but you just be ready with your words and you say them as soon as your turn comes up, you know, and definitely be ready when your turn comes up. Don't make them wait. Don't irritate them. Let them give you your time and take that time right away. And also be bold. Finne is a hero to me in the way she speaks and what she speaks in these committee hearings. Don't be afraid to say exactly what you're thinking, and, you know, do so respectfully. But if you think that something is awful, say that it's awful, and say why, and say why you're against it. Don't Brad was talking about, you know, speak it with passion, speak it from your heart. Now, a lot of times I did go in with a prepared thing and read it, but when I hear other people saying it with you know, with what they really feel, you could totally tell that the mood in this meeting would change. So I really want to just beg people to get on this legislative action team and help us out. Last session, there were more than 2,000 bills that came through, and we need more people to help us review the bills, to help write testimonies, to help, you know, just to help us out, because, you know, with a team of 20 people and 2,000 bills, that's just, it gets overwhelming, and we really need to work together and make a difference in the place where they actually make the laws. Rallies are great, you know, all of that is fine. Getting online and putting things out there on the internet are great, but we really need to get into the room where the lawmakers are making the laws.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Jeannie. And that's exactly what we, you know, tried to do this session, was just amplify our voice and get more soldiers in the battle with us. And one of the things that we all recognized this session was how great would it be if we had this, you know, huge army of people, so that these committees weren't seeing the same faces every time. And so it was kind of, you know, you kind of keep them on their toes, so to speak. So that they're, you know, they're guessing, you know, rather than, oh, it's that Jeannie Magdua lady again, we know exactly, you know, what she's going to say. Whereas if you have somebody else that you can throw into the mix, it really shakes things up. So thank you for all of that. And it is always interesting when they, you know, allow their side of testifiers to kind of dawdle on. And then when it comes to us, it's you get clipped at your 60 seconds and wrap it up now, please. So, but we keep at it and we keep showing up. We've got some hands up. MJ, I'm going to give you the mic.
Yeah. So on that note, you guys have done such a great job, conservative ladies of Washington, that we are trying to emulate that here in Spokane. So we, as Spokane GOP, are starting our own legislative action team. So we're trying to not duplicate efforts, but add on. So we're going to grow our own team here locally that also will support, you know, what you're doing, and then also, you know, be about what's happening here locally as well. And so we added that committee, our board, Spokane GOP approved that committee a couple months ago. So you're doing the right stuff. And I so appreciate that. And that really is, we've just got to get people plugged in and have, it takes numbers. Unfortunately, it takes numbers, right? You need the numbers. If they're able, and I say they, but the system, however you want to look at it, legislators or, even school boards, if they're able to, if it's just one of you, they're able to kind of pick you off one by one. They really are, but you need numbers. And so if you're advocating, that's what I just love about what you all are doing. And you do such a great job in your messaging. You make it easy for people. Keep doing that. Thank you for what you're doing. And we can copy that. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have this great model right before us, right? The other thing I wanted to just add, as we're talking about legislation and state legislation, that is so important. And don't forget the rulemaking. Because we have seen one word, we did private school rules last year, one word, they wanted to change school to organization. And that one word we fought for, and we were able to keep it on school because that is what the law says. It doesn't say private organizations. And I know Leave is an amazing partner in this. She's very helpful. She's emailing us constantly and I love it. It's helpful. She points out things and it helps us. But when agencies are doing the rulemaking, OSPI is a little different deal because they don't have a board, right? It's a superintendent of public instruction, but he still has the rulemaking authority that has to go through a public process, just like we do. So I would add on to not just legislation, but rulemaking, because rulemaking affects things in the application of the law. And again, one word can change all sorts of things. So just want to say that. And especially when we were talking about the vouchers and what happens in private schools will impact, right? How those vouchers or how the scholarships, sorry, I'm going to change my language on that, Jim, will be used, right? And so we need to watch what's happening with the rulemaking around private schools. And it's not easy. It's a tough fight because they like to put everything under, safety of children, right? Or health and safety. And it sounds really good, but when you're adding on rules to what the intent of what the original legislation is, that's wrong. And we have to fight the system back on that.
Yeah, that's a really important point about the rulemaking. And so maybe you can connect with our team so that we can pay a little bit more attention to that moving forward and get citizens involved in that process as well. So please remind me of that. Maybe you and I can connect that via email later this week. Leslie.
I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of what Jeannie said. There is a lot of apathy in our country right now, in our state, in the counties, in the cities. There's a lot of apathy, but I do also see a lot of grassroots starting to pop up and getting involved. So for anybody out there, you're not alone. There are people just like you, like us, that are involved, and all it takes is just reaching out, getting a hold of us, and letting us know you want to be involved, because there is something for you to do. The more people that come in and help, it'll make more people out there be a little bit more brave, and the apathy will be less and less. So, I mean, that's what we got to do, is just get people to stand up and join us. There's a lot of different groups out there to get involved with, of course, conservative ladies, but they're out there. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. You're not alone.
Yeah, and that's so important too. And when people plug into a group, whether it's conservative ladies or your local GOP or whatever organization, there's Moms for Liberty, and there's a lot of good grassroots organizations that are doing a lot of good things, and you'll find encouragement just working with like-minded people and knowing that you're not alone. And I think that alone is very important, is that encouragement factor. Leave, I see you've got your hand up as well. You've got something to say?
Yes. 2 points with respect to rulemaking And at the administration of a scholarship program, I'm seeing that other states are putting in private organizations and avoiding the state education board, the state education boards and OSPI equivalents in their states. They're hiring private organizations to administer these scholarship funds, which I think is a good idea, because the union has captured these organizations in Washington State particularly. That's just a technical point. But with respect to the wonderful point that Leslie just brought up, I have been in this for 15 years. I have not seen the activity that you represent for the first 13 years I was working at this. The last 2 years has been an explosion of interest and participation amongst the people in their schools. In other states where the Republicans are in control, they have passed 8 universal school choice laws in 8 states. This is an amazing revolution that's happening right now in other states. There are another 2 states passed very almost universal. So we're talking about 10 states giving, if Texas and North Carolina sign on to these states, 30% of the school children in the nation are going to be eligible for a private school choice scholarship. Okay, we're talking about a big deal. And so what we're doing here in Washington State has been happening in these other states and succeeding. So that should really motivate everybody here. We can be just like the states of Iowa, Ohio, Utah, Arkansas, Arizona, Florida. I mean, it's amazing what's happening. So you're just the beginning of this. And if you build your group, you are going to live to see the day when we pass school scholarships in Washington State. It's amazing. In South Carolina, they've been working for 20 years, and they now have a school scholarship bill to private schools. So it's tremendously exciting. And it's such an honor to be part of this group, because I know you're going to get there. You're younger than I am, a lot of you. So you'll be there. It's great.
Well, it's been an honor to work alongside of you, and I definitely would give you a lot of credit for getting me involved and helping me learn the process and how to testify, because it's, I had never done it until the 2022 session. And I think, Lee, you probably remember the first time I testified, it was on Jim Walsh's bill, and I was in my PJs because I didn't know I had to be on camera.
Julie, you didn't need any help. You're so smart. You did it great. You just picked it up like, duck goes to water. You're amazing. Really, this group thing, it's fantastic. And then all the people you found around you are amazing. And then, of course, it's so lucky we have Jim Walsh, who is so smart and so well spoken and can communicate so well with people watching the state. Seriously.
Now, Lee, you can't keep doing that. It's going to get out of hand here. But I mean, this is what we've got that will drive reform. The bad performance of K-12 schools in Washington right now. And we've played games with the metrics on how we measure our K-12 school system's performance. If any of you have kids, and I'm sure you all do, you remember we've had what do we had? We've had the WASL, we've had the SBAC. We've kind of floundered around from test system to test system because we don't like the results. We see that our proficiency of these kids, our kids are, you've seen the numbers. I mean, 50% are not proficient at reading and writing, and more, 60% are not proficient in basic math, so not calculus, algebra, geometry, arithmetic. And that's what's going to drive the reform. I mean, the unions and the radical groups who are affiliated with the unions, they can do their thing and grab their dough, and they're rent seekers and they seek their rent and all that thing, but they aren't powerful enough to stop a wave of parents who want to make sure that their kids can read and write and add. Yeah. And all their critical race theory and all their comprehensive sex education will fall apart because kids aren't able to read and write. I'm friendly with the electricians union in my part of the state, the IBEW, and they run a really outstanding apprentice program for kind of Southwest Washington, Portland area of Oregon. And they're in kind of a weird place because their tradition is they're very partisan Democrat, the IBW, but they're starting to switch that up. They're starting to be a little more bipartisan. And I was talking with the guy that I know there. He helps run their apprentice program. And he said these kids were getting out of high school. They don't know how to bend a pipe to 30 degrees to run electrical conduit through. They don't know what 30 degrees means. So we have to teach them that a circle has 360 degrees and a 30 degree is part of a circle, and that's how you bend a pipe. And this is a guy, frankly, who comes up, you know, he himself was very liberal Democrat most of his life. And he just is furious that an 18-year-old kid who has a high school diploma doesn't know what 30 degrees means on bending a pipe. And this is how we're going to get reform in Washington. Because for all of our pretense and all of our focus on high tech and green energy, we aren't teaching kids how to read or what a 30-degree bend in a line is. And that is absurd. And that will be what drives fixing school choice. It'll be what drives fixing these crazy budget gimmicks that we use to fund schools. And it's what will fix having someone like this current superintendent who really mishmashes state law in a way that's insulting to anybody who reads his memos. All that will fall away because parents and families want their kids to be functional.
Yeah, that's really true. The education piece of policy is really where people of all political affiliations can come together and align that we all want the same things for our kids. So it's really a great issue to unite citizens, you know, not just parents, but citizens. You know, you've got, like you said, the unions, they want to be able to hire workers that are competent and know how to bend a pipe 30 degrees. I want to point out as well that Andrew dropped a link to the OSPI report card into the chat for everyone. So highly recommend grabbing that link and using that in your conversations with other people. Because the facts don't lie. They are what they are. And Joy, I see you've got your hand up. Do you want to add something here?
I just wanted to add from the parent perspective and what can you do and what are parents doing at the school board level. Across the nation this last year, we have made change, and it's because parents stood up. Parents are standing up. Just a couple little facts, 78% last November of Moms for Liberty endorsed school board candidates won their seats. We flipped whole school boards. The AFT dumped several tens of thousands of dollars just into one county in Florida, Duval County, this last year, and said that we weren't going to be able to flip any of the school board. Guess what we did? We flipped the entire school board. Parents in San Francisco, California, flipped the entire school board. You can do this. I have the joy of sitting in school board meetings with parents and watching the power that they have and watching that fire turn on in their eyes the first time that they speak. And then you can never shut them up. And that's what we need. We need that power. We need that enthusiasm, because you are the only people who can make the best decisions for your children, and don't let anyone ever tell you differently. And if you need help with training for school board, anything like that, please reach out to your local chapter of Moms for Liberty. Even if you don't have one near you, reach out. We love you, and we will get you hooked up with resources.
Yeah, and if you don't have a Moms for Liberty chapter in your county, you can start one, or you can reach out to Joy if you are, say, running for school board or something like that, and Joy will help get you connected to resources. So let's go ahead and take some questions from our audience. We've got a lot of questions about school boards, and then if we have enough time, I would like to touch a little bit on the gender inclusive schools, because that's kind of a a big thing that's going on right now as well. So Mickey is asking, Jim, this goes back to what you were talking about the power of the school board members. She's asking, how can new school board members know know they have this power Mr. Walsh speaks of?
It's a great question.
Well, I mean, read chapter 28A in the RCW. We've already cited the actual subsection where it describes it. You're going to, if you get elected to a school board, you're going to go through some boot camp with WASDA, the School Directors Association here in Washington. You're going to have to take that with a grain of salt. I mean, take what's valuable in it, but don't borrow everything they say. There are a couple of groups that are going to do kind of alternative training for new school board members who are more independent minded. Leave, I don't know if WPC is going to do one, but Pacific Justice Institute, which is a group out of California, is running a training for people who've been elected to school boards. I don't know if they have a location for it, but it'll be after the November elections. So it'll be in late November, early December. And I think it's like a couple of days, maybe 2 or 3 days. And it would be a place where you would learn both legally and constitutionally, and then just pure policy wise, what your power as a school board is, a school board member.
We're holding an event right after the election.
Yep.
I think it's with the Pacific Justice Institute to do just
Yeah,
that.
I talked to them about it. And they got, it's all like funded and it doesn't cost anybody anything. You just show up and they tell you how to be independent and focus on kids and education and not politics and indoctrination and blarney.
That's awesome. Hopefully we have a lot of school board directors in Washington that will take advantage of that resource. Before we move on to the next question, I saw Nancy, I think it's Nancy Buttons, mentioned that she is running for school board in Ferndale. Nancy, if you would post if you have a website or a Facebook page or somewhere that people can go to support your campaign, I would love for everybody that's here tonight to support you by liking your Facebook page or going to your campaign website and finding out how they can support you, even if you do not live in the school district. Erica, are you also running for school board? It looks like
she is. She's running in Spokane.
Okay, awesome.
So please support Erica as well.
So Erica, if you would do the same, and I see that Sherry Larkin is on tonight as well, and Sherry is a CLW member who is running for school board in Snohomish School District. So Sherry, if you would, oh, there she dropped it. She just put her, so I see we've got all of our websites in here now. So if you all would just do me a favor and go to their website. Beth Perry just dropped hers in here. Wow, that's awesome. We have at least 5 people. Cool. Lots of school board candidates in here tonight. This is awesome.
This is what I'm talking about, Julie. This is happening all over Washington.
Yay!
Yeah, this is great. So you guys, please reach out and let us know how we can support you. If you need resources, we can connect you to people that have resources, but we want to help you. Sherry's looking for a connection for Moms of Liberty, Snohomish County. So Joy, could I task you with connecting with Sherry, please?
100%.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So Sherry, go ahead.
Julie, I was just going to add too, I believe there, as far as resources go, I believe there's now a conservative school board caucus that is being created. I don't have the connection. I don't have Representative Walsh or Eve. If you have that information, that also it would be a good resource for people.
Semi Bird has been kind of the orchestrator of it. I don't know, I mean, he's running for governor now, so I don't know how much time he has to run it going forward. The person who's in that conservative school board members caucus for my part of the state is Crystal Moldenauer, who's a school board member of the Longview School District. So if anybody wants to connect, I can get you in touch with Crystal. And she's a firecracker. She's a great person. She may end up running it. I don't know. They ended up having her run for president of WASDA, which, if you know anything about that organization, she didn't get elected, but it was an absolute shock to the system there that this kind of firebrand conservative woman from Longview was running for president of WASDA. She's very bright and very helpful.
What's her name again?
Crystal Moldenauer.
Okay.
She's on the school board at the Longview School District.
Okay. Well, I've heard that that's a 60-person strong group, not a small group.
I think it's somewhat underground. I mean, I think it's somewhat informal, so I don't know that they exactly want to be recognized. They're sort of like ninjas. But yeah, there are a few people in it. There are more than a few people in it.
Well, that's fantastic. This is very encouraging. I love seeing all of these school board candidates. And I saw that Katie posted a couple of conservative school board members in Highline. So grab those two. Katie is a CLW member, and so I know that those are legit candidates. So grab all these links and support these people. And I will go through the chat tomorrow after the event and put these all into an email and send it out to you guys. So if you don't grab it tonight, you can grab it then. And we've got another question about school boards, and it's from Tanya Noble, but I think it's from Brian, her husband, as he signed one of these questions. So I'm going to ask both of them at the same time, and you guys, our panel, can kind of chime in on both of them or one or the other. So the first part of the question is, how do we teach our school boards to handle idle threat negotiations? And how do we teach our boards to address and challenge risk adverse attorneys?
Well, the risk management thing is another intimidation tactic that WASDA uses to cower new school board members and any school board member. Remember too that WASDA, it's a unique organization. It is actually recognized in state law as basically a monopoly organization for the education and organization of school board members around the state. Other organizations don't have that kind of recognition in the law. And it also functions as a sort of, I don't know what to say, informal manager of the insurance that most school districts carry. And they use the threat of this insurance coverage or a district's loss of the insurance coverage to try to cower board members to accept recommended policy, accept recommended curriculum, do what they're told generally. And it's unfortunate that they use the insurance as the means of sort of coercion there, but that's where you hear a lot about this risk management in school board director circles, and it's basically a fancy way of saying, you know, we're going to force you to do what we want you to do, or we're going to cancel your insurance. And this gets back to the whole threat, implied or made explicitly, that you, the school board member, can be held personally liable for bad decisions you make. I mean, that is technically true, but it very rarely ever happens. And basically, you have to do something that rises to the level of, you know, negligence in a legal environment to be held personally liable. But they use it as an effective cudgel to get people, to get new members to do what they want. You can push back against that, but you have to understand what the tools are they use for their coercion. And the cooperative insurance, it's a big self-funded insurance pool that all school districts pay into, actually can give school boards more independence. I mean, it's like a mutual insurance company. They're owners as well as insured in this co-op. And but they don't see it like that. They're told just to be careful all the time. And you know, and you should be careful. Of course you should be careful, but you don't have to be fearful. And that's kind of the thin line there. I get that was not exactly an answer to your question, but be wary of that risk management buzzword. It's used to get directors to comply.
Awesome. MJ, do you have something you want to add to that, or Brad?
I think that's very helpful, because I think it at least spells it out of what you're dealing with, because that absolutely was used. You can't, we were told you can't respond to public comment because, then you're adding agenda item and and then you could be sued. And, so there's some of that, yeah, may be accurate, but I do absolutely, that was my experience. Like, you're scared, right? They kind of run you scared on these things. So, I think it's a great question, and it is Brian Noble, our chair of the Spokane GOP. So we got great representation here tonight. How can we help give these school board members the tools to overcome that? And that's, I think, something we can work on together. Obviously, that's needed. I really appreciate you pointing that out, Jim. And as we continue to help maybe mitigate that, I think that's going to be some work we can do.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Leslie, do you want to chime in on this one as well?
I am a little, well, I'll call it belligerent, but I believe render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. I believe that if we all stand up and just do what's right, even if it's all the school board members and they want to fine every school board member across the state, let it happen. Because I think it would make a big, huge impact if they all just did it. And they're not going to do it unless us as citizens are standing behind them saying, we're behind you. No matter what happens, we're here for you. So, I mean, that's what I believe. It might be bad to think that way, but I really believe if we just all stand up, they're not going to do it to everybody. They're not going to do it because everybody is behind them.
No, I don't think it's bad at all to say that, Leslie. It's going to take more bodies and seats on boards to get to the place where there's a critical mass that, standing up like that would be effective. I mean, we're moving that direction. I just think at current, WASDA is still dominated by directors who see it differently. They're sort of cowed by all the risk management talk. But like Leif said, I mean, the conservative group it might be 60, it might be 80, it might be 100. Its numbers are growing, and it's heading the right direction.
Go ahead, Leif.
I love the sentiment, Leslie. It's what I would say, just try to be practical in the meantime. Think of WASDA as being captured and demand independence. You can get extra, you can just demand, I need to have extra insurance to sit on this board. I mean, people buy more insurance all the time. And that WASDA, mind you, is funded by taking a percentage of the money, a portion for the students, and giving it to that organization. So push back there, say, they legally get that money by statute, but you could say, you're not giving us independent advice, hire independent lawyers. That's nothing. Nancy Button is bringing that up. They're getting advice from the local ESD up there in Bellingham, who they say, fall down in front of what the union wants. What I've been shocked by is that these unions have pushed deals on districts by using the threat of strike. Budgets that these districts can't afford. Look at the Seattle Public Schools. It has $131 million shortfall because of the power of the union. And
told them not to spend the ARPA money on heads, and they did it anyway.
It's amazing.
Everyone saw it coming, Leave. We said to them, don't use this money on staff. It's one-time money. No. Well, we're going to work it out. We're going to.
Oh my God. And now they're cutting every student program known to man. Okay. And it's just a big scam. But does anyone take the union to court? These are illegal strikes. They sign agreements that say that have no strike clauses in them. Yet the school boards never seem to take the union to court and push that and push the legal system to protect the budget integrity of the school district. So anyway.
Well, I mean, you said it, it's the ESDs that are the problem. Is everybody up to speed on education service districts? They are the super districts that exist they're a level of bureaucracy between the state, OSPI, and the local elected school boards, which are the locals. There's this middle level of bureaucracy, education service districts. There are about, what, like 12 or 18 of them? How many are there? Nine. It seems like there are more. All right, there are 9 of them. Yeah, MG knows. There are 9 of them around the state. And so they're geographic, and every school district within their geographic area has to be part of the education service district. Their membership, their leadership is elected not by the public, but by the board members of the school districts in their geographic area. So they're not really responsive to anybody, at least not directly. And they are where an explosion of your tax dollars being spent have gone lately. These ESDs have grown mightily in size and in the number of employees they have. And they are, they're not helpful. And it would be, it'd be a good thing for most kids in our state if we got rid of them altogether. But that was going to take a lot. In the meantime, their mission needs to be narrowed. They were originally designed to provide like legal advice and certain services that smaller school districts can't afford to have on their own. So the original concept was okay, but they've exploded into something way more than they were originally intended to be, and they have a bad effect on local management.
I've got 2 questions that are both about the ESDs that I want to, and they're kind of out of order, but it's relevant to the current conversation. So it's kind of 2 parts. Jeannie's asking about why do the ESDs exist? Their role seems so vague. And then Nancy Button is asking, I've been told that the ESDs want to replace school districts. Have you heard this?
Well, sure, they want to do everything. I mean, yeah, let's not do that, right? School districts are locally elected. They have broad discretionary power. You know, ESDs don't have broad discretionary power. They're just in there grabbing it. Like I said, their original mission, the original purpose of ESDs was to provide certain services that smaller school districts couldn't afford to provide by themselves. Basically legal advice, like HR type advice. But they've grown up into recommending curricula, recommending teacher hires, recommending all kinds of local decisions. And they're, it's where bureaucrats, go when they go to heaven, is an ESD, because it's a bureaucrat's dream.
I just love how Representative Walsh says it like it is, because
he really does. It's so true. So the ESDs are manned by superintendents who are making a lot of money. So I think of it as there are teachers that get tired of teaching. They go and get pay raise and go work in a central bureaucracy somewhere. I think of the ESDs as a place where the superintendents who are tired of superintending go, and they maintain their high pay, they max their pay so they get a great pension, and they are trying to seize power. And I've heard of specific complaints from the Bellingham area because they're not getting independent legal advice. I'm shocked, seriously, that they're at the failure of legal advice in the state of Washington. How many lawyers are on the payroll of these school districts across the state, and they are implementing illegal laws that the legislature has passed? I mean, come on. Okay, so I'll offer up a policy brief that we wrote called Know Your Rights, okay, which we wrote after Governor Inslee signed that infamous bill putting CRT in the schools. And it is an illegal bill, okay, that teaches, that is now driving districts to hire teachers based on race and to eliminate programs because of a disparity in outcomes by race. These are illegal ideas, and they're doing it. And so anyway, I could rant on and on about the lawyers that are not representing their school districts. And if I were a school board member elected, the first thing I would do is hire an independent law firm to represent that school district.
I think there are a lot of laws that get passed that are completely illegal. And they just do it because they can. And I think the more illegal laws they have, it's like there's just this flood of illegal, legislation and a lot, shame on us as citizens, because most of us don't even know our rights.
Well, and look at how they apply two sets of laws here in Seattle. If you are homeless in camp, there are no laws. There's a law that says you can't park in front of, on the public streets for 72 hours, after 72 hours, except, of course, if you're dealing drugs. Then it's okay. You can stay there forever until the baseball people come to town, and then they clear you away. So this is crazy. And I just think knowing your rights and saying, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Saying what Lesty's saying. This is an immoral law. I'm not going to follow it. And that's a tried and true and honored methodology in our jurisprudence, believe me. So I love when Representative Jim says, what is it you say? Resist tyranny and do it happily. And I love what you say, because it's very true. You just do it with
Peaceful non-compliance.
Peaceful non-compliance. We learned that years ago, didn't we?
That's right. We are right at 11:29, or sorry, 8:29. I'm on the East Coast, so it is later here.
Oh, goodness.
I want to take, this is a good question because, so I want to I'm going to let Brad answer this question, but before I throw it over to Brad, I want to chime in about something that happened this session. So the question is from Mickey Bosman. Does the superintendent have any authority to cut funding? And this session, I want to say it was Senate Bill 5441 or 5462. I forget which one it was, but there was a bill that would punish school districts if they did not comply with the, they call it ethnic studies, but it's critical race theory. And if your district did not comply with the state mandated critical race theory, then the state could cut your funding. And I believe that would have gone through the OSPI. They did, that bill did die in session, or rather it's sleeping until next session, when it could and probably will come back around. But does the superintendent have any authority to cut funding? Brad, do you want to speak to that? And then it looks like maybe Representative Walsh wants to chime in on that one as well.
Well, I think Jim already did a great job of covering that, how Chris Reichendahl, the superintendent of public instruction at this time, tried to weave and patch together pieces of legislation to show that he had such authority, and many of us believe he does not. And I love the idea of resist. I am a school resource officer for 2 school districts, 6 schools, have been for 22 years now. And I sat in with one of our administrators, said, we are not going to do this. We don't have to. We've read the law and we will not comply. And more districts need to stand up and be strong, courageous. Very quickly, because I got the mic and we got no time left. Ladies and gentlemen, did you hear Julie Barrett say what time it is where she's at right now? It is it midnight yet, or past midnight? Julie Barrett, thank you for all that you do. Where you are to make this happen. We love you. we appreciate you. And I just want to share with everybody, there's a book that I love to read. It's got 66 little books inside of it. And one of them is a book called Joshua. And in the first chapter of Joshua, he says, speaking for God, have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Be strong and courageous.
Amen. Representative Walsh, do you have anything you would like to add to that question?
I don't think I can add. That was a strong finish.
That was a strong finish. Mic drop. Do you have any closing remarks, Jim?
Well, let's just keep going. I mean, I think I'm really encouraged there are people, so many school board candidates here. And it sounds like even a couple already school board members. So let's just stay in touch with any of us. You can reach through Julie, you can reach any of us. You can ping me on social media, however you want to do it. Remember the Pacific Justice Institute, they'll be doing their thing after the November elections. So keep an eye out for that. And know that, I mean, we've got half a dozen of you or so here tonight. There are dozens and dozens of you all around the state. And some don't even know they're political. I mean, some are just running they don't, I've talked to a couple who don't even want to say what their politics are. It's not about politics, it's about their kids.
Right.
And I think we're going to find common ground with a lot of new school board members, and maybe we will get the numbers that we need to do the kind of thing Leslie's talking about at WASDA. But it'll just require everyone to be brave and be bold. And Brad said it.
Yep, it's very encouraging to see all of you here tonight. And I know that you're just a representation of other people that are out there that are stepping up to run for these school board positions. And so we all want to support you. And like I said earlier, I will send out an email so that you all have the contact information from all of our panelists tonight. So if you need support, and we are not making school board endorsements, just because, you know, as a conservative named organization, we don't want that to potentially hinder your campaign. But if you would like us to share anything on our social media that would be helpful for you, we are happy to do that. So just reach out to us, and we're happy to do that. I did see that somebody asked in the Q&A, how can they get involved with our legislative action team? You can join Conservative Ladies of Washington. You can become a member. We have member Zoom meetings every Monday night. And then as we ramp up for session and during session, we really get strategic on our legislative action, and we start forming kind of subcommittees, and like Jeannie kind of described how that process works. But if you go to our website, I think Eric Pratt, he just dropped it again. So conservativeladiesofwa.com, our membership is open to men and women. We need all hands on deck. So we would love for you to join us, and you do not have to have any experience to do what we're doing. We're all kind of learning and figuring this out together. So you will be among good company there. So thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. Thank you especially to our panelists for your time this evening. And we will be doing part 2 next week, which, like I said at the beginning, will be more tools and creative ideas for if you want to pull your kids out of public school, or if you are going to stay in public school, tools for you to help navigate that so that you can empower your students, and so that you can communicate with the teachers and administration, and also be a voice on the school board and go to those meetings and chime in and make comments. So don't miss next week. We've already got the links up to register on our website, conservativeladiesofwa.com. And some of our panelists will be back again with us next week. I know we've got Brad is coming for sure next week, and Jeannie and Leslie and Joy, Jim, Leave, and MJ. You are all welcome to join us again on the panel if you would like, and you have time. We would love to have you all back again next week. So have a good rest of your evening. Thank you for making the time for this, and please get involved, and please join us again next week. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.